Alright, hello again. This is Jeff Scott, your instructor for the online version of 152, 157 Website Development XHTML CSS for the fall 2015 semester at Blackhawk Technical College. I'm now going to go over the PowerPoints for Chapter 13. We have two more chapters to go, 13 and 14. And Chapter 13 is a fairly short chapter. I'm only going to go over the PowerPoints and maybe bop back and forth between the PowerPoints and the book, but the chapter is entitled Web Promotion. So, identify commonly used search engines and search indexes. Describe the components of a search engine. Design web pages that are friendly to search engines. Submit a website for inclusion in a search engine or search directory. Monitor a search engine listing. Describe other website promotion activities and use the iframe element to create an inline frame. Well, that I've already done, and I showed you that earlier when I put in the information for the YouTube video. All right, market share survey results for a recent month. Well, Google's the big one. All right. A search directory, as mentioned right there, also known as a search engine, maintains some kind of a hierarchical categorization of topics and places websites into these particular categories. All right. It says each site is reviewed by an editor before accepted into a directory. So what happens when a website is built is you go, and if you want your website to be listed on Google, for example, you submit your entire website to Google. Now, you are able to put certain pages in there. I believe it's in a file you call robots.txt, and those files are not to be looked at by the search engines, what's called the search engine spider. It won't go through that stuff. Maybe it's mainly comments or text files or whatever, but it goes through the rest. And it looks for certain things, such as when you've got, and we'll look at some of these in this chapter, when you've got meta tags for things like descriptions, is that really what the site's about? To give you a little quick example of what I'm talking about. After 9/11, back in 2001, there were a lot of websites that put 9/11 into meta tags for their sites, but the sites had nothing to do with 9/11. They were just hoping for the increased exposure. So what happens is these search engines, they go through your site and they make sure that you are what you say you are in your meta tags. Alright, there's Google and there's Bing. Again, search engines use a robot or a spider, and they take that information and basically throw it into a database. Now, what's interesting about going through this stuff with this spider or bot, notice it's a computer program that follows hyperlinks and walks your website. It accesses and documents your pages. It categorizes the pages and stores that information in their own database. So it can look at all these different things that are shown here. All right? But the key thing to realize is, as it's going through this, how truthful you are in the way that you set the site up and the way you've got all the stuff set up here is going to determine, among other things, but that's going to somewhat determine, first, whether or not they even accept your site. And it's not a thing that happens overnight. It can take anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. All right, and also where you're ranked. Now, ideally, you want let's say you're selling sporting goods. All right, so you've got Jeff's Sporting Goods Emporium. Ideally, when somebody puts sporting goods into a search engine, I want Jeff's Sporting Goods Emporium to come up first. It's probably not going to for a lot of reasons. All right, there are other sites that have been spidered first, and sometimes it actually cache, Google claims this isn't the case, but from what I've heard from people, cache may be, cache transactions may take place between people to make sure that they get a very high ranking. When I say a high ranking, what you want is when you go into Google, ideally you want your site to appear on the first page when you're going in and searching for something. So there's a database. All right, and don't worry about what this is. If you are in the 152-163 class, the Relational Database Design class, you already know what a database is. You know what a relational database management system is. All right, and a search engine database, as it says, contains information about web pages. The search form, well, it says the part you're most familiar with. Pretty much that's the way it is in Google, right? You type in something and boom. As it says, the search form is the graphical user interface that allows the user to request a word or phrase to search for. The visitor to the search engine types words, also known as keywords, related to their search into the text box. When you click the button, that submits the form and the data typed in is sent to the server that searches the database looking for what you've just put in. The results of that search are also known as a result set, and they're a list that contains the information of the stuff that you're looking for. And that's what you get, is the search engine result page. Now, next they start talking about designing web pages for promotion. And I'm not even sure what that is. I'm looking here. What's in the book doesn't always map up with what's in these slides. So let's go through the slides and then we'll go look back at some of the stuff in the book. All right, so designing web pages for promotion. Keywords. Well, you put those in again as meta tags. And they're things that if people are searching for your site, so again, if it was a sporting goods store, I might put in baseball, basketball, golf, football, tennis, etc. You create a list of them, and sometimes, as it says there, if some of these words have common misspellings, you might want to put those in too. Description in these meta tags. What's special about your site that would make someone want to visit? As it says, it should be 25 to 30 words, and it should be power-packed words that make people, want to come to your site. Some search engines, as it says, will display your description in the search engine results page, or the SERP. All right. So, notice what it says. The meta element is a standalone tag. It's placed in the head section. It has a name, typically, and it has content, so you can have like description in there. So here's an example. Acme Design, a premier web consulting group that specializes in e-commerce website design, website development, and website redesign. Okay, like they said, about 25 or 30 words. SEO is a big topic. It stands for search engine optimization, as it says. You determine your keywords, you determine what your title will be, all the other stuff that you're going to put in your tags. They talk about linking, providing text navigation hyperlinks. You always want to verify that all of your links are working, not just your links, but if you're ever linking to another site, you want to make sure those are working. We've talked about CSS, images, and multimedia throughout the entire course. You want to make sure when you're starting to go through this, your code is valid, that you've run all of your HTML, and this really should say, I think, HTML, but you've run all of your HTML through the HTML validator, all of your CSS through the CSS validator. You should always be following best practices. Your code should be well organized, meaningful, and useful to your target audience. And again, you should all understand this, that the site that I created is actually a very small site. It's got what is it, 5 or 6 pages? One, two, three, four, 5, 6 pages. And in addition, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 images, I got rid of the image I wasn't using. It has one JavaScript file, and it has 3 CSS files. That's not a big website at all. All right, it says, for listing in the search engine, wait until your site is finished. Don't submit an under construction website. All that'll do is delay the entire process. All right. All right. It says follow the directions. You know, when you're submitting your stuff, and fill out the form and follow them completely. Don't be in a hurry to submit anything. Look at it, make sure it's correct. Then, sometime after that, a robot from the search engine will visit your website and it will index it, also known as spidering it. It says allow several weeks. So maybe after a few weeks you can start going out to Google or whatever and see when you put in, you know, the keywords for your site if it's listed there. Here they talk about preferential placement. You can read this. I'll leave this up here for a second. Sometimes this click-through rate, all right, how do you get moved up on the search engine? Well, you have a lot of different people visit your site a lot of different times. There's a big difference between having 100 hits on your site by 100 different people and having one person go to your site 100 times. You should get in and start thinking about things like setting up a sitemap. Again, our sitemap would be very simple. Always, there's things like Google Analytics, which allows you to go through and do some monitoring of your website. Notice they define web analytics here as being the measurement, collection, analysis, and reporting of internet data for purposes of understanding and optimizing web usage. So the idea is, depending on, you could have companies do this for you. There are free tools that you can use for it. There are tools that you can pay for to use it. You can find things like, what time of the day is your site being hit most often? Who's hitting it most often? Again, if you're getting hit 50 times a day, is it 50 different people? Or is it one person 50 times? All sorts of things like that. Rating determined by a search engine based on a number of sites that link to a particular website and quality. The bottom line is this. The way that Google actually rates their sites is unknown. It's a secret formula, supposedly, that they have that they aren't going to share. Social media optimization, it says optimizing a site so that it's more easily to link to. For example, if I, with social media, and the big ones, all right, and I want to mention two things to you here for kind of quickly. So the first one is this. If I go out to Facebook and I look in there and I type in Blackhawk Technical College, you'll see that Blackhawk has a page. All right? And it has stuff that's in there. Even a place like Blackhawk has got something. The other thing I want to mention to you real quickly is, if you have not done this, all right, and if you're a new student, you may not have even heard of this site before, go out to linkedin.com. And if you can't read that, I want to make it bigger because I want you to be able to read that. That's it right there. Why? LinkedIn, for lack of better words, is kind of like Facebook for professionals. All right? I know many people who have at least gotten an interview because they have stuff out on LinkedIn. It's a professional site. You can put the equivalent of your resume out there and other information about yourself out there. Let's see if I get in right now. I don't remember my password, so if they ask me for it, I'm going to be shot. Okay, there's Jeff Scott. There we go. This is a guy who's actually a Przemek He was a student at Blackhawk years ago. He came over here from Poland and spent a few years here. All right, so let's see. Profile, edit profile. What I have basically here is the equivalent of what I have in my on my resume. Information technology instructor. Well, now it's 23 plus years, so I probably should update that. What I did before, I worked at Woodward Governor Company. I was a teacher at another technical college. I worked as a programmer for 4 years. I worked in a produce department at a coal store for 9 years. I was a reporter, etc. All that stuff is in there. All right. But LinkedIn, again, is a social media site for professional people. And if you have never looked at it before, you should go out there. And it's not only a way for you to put your stuff out there, but it's a way for you to network with other people. All right, they talk about some of the benefits of using social media optimization. You can read these yourselves. Ideally, you want people, as many people as possible, to see whatever product it is you're hawking. All right, there's other things that you can do also, and some of them are shown right here. If you've never seen one of these before, it's called a quick response code or a QR code. As it says, it's a two-dimensional barcode that's readable by a smartphone or barcode reader. All right? Take a look at the book if you want more of that. Finally, inline frames. And again, I showed you an example of an inline frames. To many people, the word frame itself is evil, because frames used to be used on websites and they're hardly ever used anymore. But notice what it does. It embeds one web page within another in a scrolling area. Okay? So it can be a nice thing to have. All right, we'll talk about it a little bit more in just a couple minutes. That's pretty much it for the chapter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this. I'm going to stop the lecture right now, and then I'm going to go back here to chapter 13 in the book and go over very quickly to make sure we didn't miss anything that was in the book.